Hi everyone, in this week's Dispatch video we will be talking about harassment under the Equality Act and specifically the proposal to reintroduce an extension of liability in circumstances where harassment has been carried out by a third party to an employer's business. So harassment under the Equality Act at present is limited to acts which are essentially done by other employees, where they engage in unwanted conduct in relation to a relevant protected characteristic such as age, disability, race, religion or belief, which has the purpose or effect of either violating another employee's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment for that employee. There are further definitions of sexual harassment and rejection of or submission to conduct of a sexual nature within the Equality Act. And liability attaches to the employer through what we call vicarious liability. So an act done by an employee in the course of their employment is treated as having been done by the employer, one defence being where the employer took all reasonable steps to prevent the employee from doing the discriminatory act, and we'll come on to how that might be played out in practice. So before the 1st of October 2013, harassment protection did extend to acts which were carried out by third parties to the business. So that might be visitors, suppliers, customers and clients. But that was repealed. Now, it has been seen as a gap in the legislation, no protection under employment law. Potentially there is civil protection, but not in the Employment Tribunal. So the Worker Protection Amendment of Equality Act 2010 bill is being backed by the government. It's now reached the House of Lords, and I don't really see a reason why this wouldn't come into effect probably within the next 12 months. So that expands Section 40 of the Equality Act and essentially widens the circumstances in which an employer will be treated as having harassed an employee. This includes circumstances where a third party harasses the employee in the course of their employment, and where, similarly to before, the employer failed to take all reasonable steps to prevent that third party from doing so. And as I say, that could be a customer, client, visitor to the premises, somebody on the telephone speaking to an employee. Now, the concern at reintroducing this extension of liability, I think, is the restriction on freedom of speech. So we could be creating quite a culture of litigation if everything an employee took offence to was potentially actionable if it touched any protected characteristic. So under the new widening of the legislation, where the harassment involves a conversation in which the employee is not a participant or a speech which is not aimed at them, where that conversation or speech contains an expression of an opinion on a political, moral, religious or social matter, where that opinion is not indecent or grossly offensive, and where the harassment is not intentional, the employee will not be taken to have failed to take all reasonable steps to prevent harassment. And that's excluding sexual harassment, which we'll come on to. So there is a threshold which must be met in terms of the comments, which have effectively got to be quite grossly offensive in order to be protected under the Act. Now, that doesn't apply to cases of sexual harassment. There is a new duty to take all reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of employees in the course of their employment, and that can be enforced by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, EHRC, or of course an employment tribunal in a claim. There will also be a code of practice developed by the EHRC, which will be published in due course and which will guide employers on how to take all reasonable steps to prevent harassment. There are also a couple of examples given in the explanatory notes. So these are in relation to an employee overhearing a conversation between two employees concerning the treatment of immigrants. There is also two customers discussing and making racial slurs. The examples focus on the employer perhaps having a zero tolerance policy, which is communicated not only internally, but also to all visitors to the business and all customers that a business might engage with from time to time. There is also the potential for undertaking training to highlight and reinforce that zero tolerance stance. So I think we do have to be prepared for the legislation to come in, for this to be widened. There is an argument that this creates quite a a loss of control for the employer, because they will say, how do we protect the employees and influence customers' behaviour? We don't have control of that in the same way that we do with somebody working under a contract of service. So the focus really will be on taking those reasonable steps, and as I say, reinforcing the point that we need up-to-date policies, we need potentially up-to-date correspondence with our third parties that we engage with, and possibly a programme of training as well, just to remind all employees of the stance that we take. If you do need any further advice on this, or indeed any other employment law matter, please do get in touch by emailing employmenthub@chadlaw.co.uk. Thank you.